Good evening and welcome to With Watkins, the weekly talk show where we discuss the issues you care about with the people you trust. I am your candidate for United States Senate and your host, Dr. Richard Watkins. And who do we have with us tonight?
Well, hello, Dr. Watkins. First, I'd like to thank you for inviting me here tonight. It's really great that in your busy schedule, you're able to take the time to have these conversations and to help people learn about you and the issues facing our state and our nation. I'd also like to thank you for taking the bold step of becoming a candidate for U.S. Senate with a strong platform for science. I'm Jamie Vernon, husband of Kara DeFrank Vernon, who is a public school teacher in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm the father of 2 daughters and 2 pugs. And I'm a native North Carolinian and a proud graduate of North Carolina State University and East Carolina University. I'm a scientist who believes that the use of science in personal and community decision-making can improve lives. And I currently serve as the executive director and CEO of an organization called Sigma Xi, based in Research Triangle Park, that promotes excellence in scientific research. Now, my personal goal is to promote a universally strong research enterprise and to ensure that the benefits of scientific research are delivered efficiently and equitably to all people.
Wow. And thank you for what you do. I really appreciate that. And you touched on it a little bit, but I want you to go into a little bit more detail about why should we prioritize science?
Sure. It's an important question because, as you and I both know, most people out there are just simply trying to feed and care for their families. And they're working 40 hours a week, and often that's barely enough to pay the bills. And when we say the word science, it usually reminds them of a difficult class they had in school where they were required to memorize a bunch of facts that probably had little to do with the top priorities in their lives. But it's important for people to know that science is more than a bunch of facts. It's actually humankind's greatest tool for understanding the world and generating solutions to our greatest problems. So science is actually a process. It's an approach to a problem that allows us to have confidence that the solutions and the technologies built on it will be effective and reliable. That phone that we have in our pocket wouldn't be possible without our investments in space exploration. The water we drink, the roads we drive on, and the energy that powers our cars and our homes wouldn't be possible without an understanding, a scientific understanding of the world. North Carolina, as you know, has for its entire existence been essentially an agricultural state. We rely heavily on farming. And even modern farming has become an incredibly technical and science-based industry. So the state has, over the years, diversified its economy and especially in recent decades. And even these new industries that are driving our economy are built on more science and engineering. So whether it's indirect or direct benefit, science is critical to our lives. And as we emerge now from COVID-19 pandemic, thanks to the vaccines, it's evidence that science can actually save us from life-threatening situations. So I think we can all prioritize that.
Wow. So you created a very nice segue and transition to my next question. And I think it's probably one of the most important questions that we'll discuss tonight. And that is, what are some of the biggest challenges that face our nation in regards to science? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So my first inclination when I'm asked this question is really to think about the opportunities that exist in science. A robust scientific enterprise creates good paying jobs and new technologies that can improve our lives. And a society that embraces science can expect a future that's safer, healthier, and more prosperous. But having said that, the biggest challenges facing our nation today are related to our economy and our national security. Since the end of World War II, the United States has essentially been the undisputed global leader in research and development. We won the space race by going to the moon. We modernized the energy sector, and we sequenced the human genome. And that research has actually resulted in technical achievements that drove the strongest economy on the planet. I don't know if you've seen this report yet from the American Society for Human Genetics, but it shows that human genetics and genomic sciences have actually added 85,000 jobs and more than $200 billion to the US economy since 2010. So that's great, but Congress has failed in reality in recent years to maintain the investments in scientific research. And other countries have actually increased their investments in science as a percentage of GDP. And so US technological dominance is not guaranteed for the future. And with growing threats like climate change and future pandemics, it's not clear that the United States will be the leader in developing the solutions to these problems. And therefore, it's unlikely we will reap the economic benefits of deploying these new solutions and technologies. So that's a serious problem. And I think we have a lot of work to do there to catch up or maintain our advantage. But on the national security front, the threat horizon to the United States is vast and multifaceted. We have to defend the nation now, not only in the physical world, but also in the cyber world. And most people understand the cybersecurity risks that we're facing. Not only can a criminal break into your computer, steal your money or your identity, as we recently saw, the cyber attacks can actually affect companies like the Colonial Pipeline and the beef industry, and nation states and lone actors now can actually create havoc in our daily lives. So in order to protect our citizens, the US must maintain that technological dominance in the cyber world as well as the physical world. And to do this, we have to invest in scientific research.
Yeah, investment in scientific research. You mentioned Congress, and I wanted to go there next. From a federal policy perspective, what does science need?
Interesting. So what really we're dealing with is a lot of public opinion polls will tell you that Americans trust science and support federal investment in science, but it's clear there appears to be a growing skepticism about the value of science to the average citizen. And I believe this is related to the sense that the benefits of science are not equitably shared. So there should be greater emphasis on making this happen. So in addition to increasing funding for basic research and applied research, which is something a lot of scientists ask for, federal policymakers need to support efforts to ensure that all aspects of science are accessible to all citizens. You know that careers in science pay significantly more than the average job. Therefore, science should be viewed as a socioeconomic ladder to improve one's personal position. And a little hard work towards a science career will actually pay off tremendously later in life for an individual. So policymakers should create incentives for institutions to actively diversify access to careers in science. But also, federal policy should make technologies developed with federal tax dollars more accessible. And this includes medical services and treatments, as well as access to the internet. The digital divide, particularly among rural and low-income communities, perpetuates the educational and economic divide that keeps too many Americans from achieving their full potential. So if you think about that young mom living in the inner city or a poor rural community who didn't go to college, if she has access to virtual education opportunities, she can give herself and her child a new life. So those of us who are involved in developing these technologies have an interest in seeing that she has that access. And our elected officials at all levels should make it possible. And you're probably following now the negotiation that's going on around the infrastructure bill in Washington. That bill has a lot of emphasis on the infrastructure around broadband access to rural communities. So we should support those types of initiatives because they can have a huge impact on the benefits of science and technology that serve everyone. But there's a different side to your question. Instead of asking what federal policy can do for science, we also need to ask what science can do for federal policy. And we should encourage policymakers to use the science that's available to them to improve the policies that they're making. And too often, science is marginalized in the policy process because it's simply inconvenient for the priorities of the politicians. So when policymakers ignore the scientific evidence, we can end up with policies that aren't even based in reality. And those policies while they may be politically expedient, will ultimately fail to achieve the outcomes that they were designed for.
Wow. Yeah, so you were talking about a situation of policy for science and science for policy, and that's a very good point. But you've also mentioned a lot of rural areas, and North Carolina has a lot of rural areas due to its history in agriculture. And so I really wanted to know, as a North Carolinian to another North Carolinian, from your perspective, why is science important specifically to the state of North Carolina?
Well, from a social perspective, societies throughout history that have embraced science have flourished in many ways, technologically, culturally, and economically. And as you like to say, you can't spell science without NC. Well, that's true. And North Carolina has some of the best colleges and universities in the country, and they're considered great because they have strong science programs. So we have a culture in the state of advancing and promoting science. So strong science programs can create a highly educated, a highly skilled workforce, and that workforce can attract to the state industry and companies that pump up the economy. And this can improve the quality of life for all North Carolinians. I'm sure you know about the Apple campus that's now planned to be built in Research Triangle Park. Well, there's no coincidence that that's happening. It's largely because of our investments in historically in the Research Triangle Park and building this incredibly talented workforce in the state. And there are a few places in this country that can compete with North Carolina's workforce, and we continue to grow. And obviously that's lifting all boats, if you will. Did you know the average salary at the Apple campus is going to be around $187,000? So those folks are going to be working largely in artificial intelligence and quantum computing, essentially advanced computer science. So they're going to need those computer science degrees. And we have to teach our children, the next generation, what the benefits are and the opportunities are in engaging in science and using science and pursuing careers in science. So as far as North Carolina goes, it's critical for us to continue to embrace science, not only as an educational pathway, but also to think about its use in the state's policies. We have our own variety of technology and science-based challenges in the state. I mean, we have coal ash problems, we have contamination of some of our waterways. How are we going to clean all that up? Well, if North Carolina doesn't have a strong science base, we're not going to be able to address any of those problems. So in that case, I think it's critical that we continue to invest in STEM education in the state.
Wow. Hey, thank you. Thank you so much for all that you do for North Carolina, all that you do for science. And I know that there are a lot of people out there tuning in who are super interested and actually want to learn more. And I know your organization, Sigma Xi, does a lot to engage the public. So if somebody out there wants to get involved, wants to learn more, where can they find you at? Where should they look? Where should they go?
Sure. Well, thanks for the opportunity. And first, I'd like to thank you. You're a member of Sigma Xi, and it's an honor to be a member of the society. Those who have made major contributions to science are recognized with membership in the organization. As executive director, you can find me at sigmaxi.org. We promote all of our work there, and I'm easy to find under the contacts page. So I hope anyone who's interested in science in North Carolina or around the world will contact me there.
Awesome. Awesome. Jamie, thank you so much. Like always, I enjoy talking to you. And I hope everyone at home watching us on Facebook Live enjoyed it as well. If you like today's conversation, you can watch it again at Richard L. Watkins on Facebook, or check out some of our other shows on Richard L. Watkins on Facebook. And also be sure to check out that same Facebook page to find out who our next guest will be. If you like our content, please consider contributing to richardlwatkins.com. Hit that donate button. It allows us to continue to bring you this amazing content. Thank you so much for being with us. This has been another episode of With Watkins. Good evening.